Hey guys, I'm back with another video. Honestly, I don't know why I have not made this video. This idea crossed my mind probably a year, maybe more ago, and for whatever reason, it slipped my mind. I didn't write it down. But what I'm gonna talk about is you'll hear some people refer to these three companies as the big three or the traditional big three. I know that there's talk of sliding in, Chinese companies into that and everything. So this video is not about that. Historically, this has been the big three. So you've got Rick Hinderer, Strider Knives, and Chris Reeve knives. You got knives that are all speaking XM18 3.5 inch Strider S&G and the plain Chris Reeve Sabenza 21. You've got knives in the $425 to $450 price range. So, and they're all frame locks, and they're all meant for heavier use, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you've got knives that are people generally, you'll find them comparing or talking about amongst this group. And people ask, which one should I pick up? Well, I'm going to kind of just run through the obvious. There's always lots of talk about pros and cons of each one, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just going to simply look at what the companies have to say based on, as Chris Reeves puts it, their mantra. So right here, we'll start with the Rick Hinderer XM18, because 9 times out of 10 when people talk about Hinderer, they mean the XM18 3.5 inch. That is pretty much synonymous with the common phrase Hinderer. So the one thing I will say before I even get into that, if you like Hinderers or if you've tried the XM platform and you don't, I really think you're missing out if you don't give this Fire Tack a try. This Fire Tack, it's roughly the same size. Roughly, it's roughly the same price. I really think you're missing out if you don't give this a go. This is also one of its pre-tack models that used to be a custom forever. So this is even older than this XM platform. But anyway, I digress. If you go and you look at the website, I guess the official mantra is overbuilt, tough, and dependable. And let me make sure I show you that this is the rickhindererknives.com website. So this is the official website. What I've heard Rick say himself when he starts talking about his knives on videos, and I think is maybe as applicable, because I'm not taking anything away from that previous statement, but he has said himself several times, make it your own. Make it your own. That's kind of one of their, I guess, unofficial mantras, if you want to call it that. And I think that's further demonstrated by, if you go right here to their knife accessories tab, you can look here and you can see all the different hardware that they have listed. You can see all of the different scales that they have listed. I mean, this knife here is a knife that has all of the parts made in-house. It's hand fit, and it's done so in a way that everything is interchangeable. So if I wanted these screws, this Chicago screw here to be one color and I wanted this standoff to be another, the standoff is not part of that Chicago screw. This standoff slides off of the Chicago screw and it's 3 separate pieces. So I literally could have one color here, one color here, and one color here. You know, I could heat anodize certain parts. It doesn't stop with that stuff with the hardware. Same thing with the pivot. Now, if I'm correct, I think they usually only change the actual screw itself, the male side of the pivot. I don't believe the female sides of the pivot. Generally speaking, there are like DLC models that come with this side of the pivot changed, but this I don't think typically is changed. You can have it tip down, you can have it tip up. I mean, the options are just, extensive, even before you get into the different types of grinds and things of that nature. What you can do with each individual knife really allows you to make it your own. So that says a lot about the design of this knife, and the thoughts behind it as it was being put together, along with the overbuilt, tough, and dependable mantra. So make it your own, and overbuilt, tough, and dependable. Strider. Again, this is just a Strider S&G. This one happens to be a 3/4 grind. Like I said, I'm not making direct comparisons. This is just a run-of-the-mill S&G. So if you go over, the one thing Strider Knives itself used to have a website, but if you go to striderknives.com, that automatically takes you to Mick Strider Custom Knives, which, if you're not familiar, Mick took over the whole show. He's making all the knives out of his custom shop. But anyway, if you go down here we go. It says, putting evolved tools into the hands of warfighters was my goal. Having formed Strider Knives perpetuated that goal. Now I want to focus on my art. So clearly this is talking more about his custom knives. But even up here it says Forged for War. And if I couldn't pull it up, I don't have a cached site. I didn't have anything to reference back to, but if you go back to the old, just plain Strider Knives site, it says hardcore tools for high-speed tools for hardcore individuals. So same type of a theme here. You see putting evolved tools up here. You see Forged for War. Very tool kind of crude is the word that comes to mind. I don't want to use the word crude, but just tool, functional tool. So functional tool, Strider. CRK. CRK, like I said, that's why I'm using the term mantra, because that is what they use on their website. And if you look, their mantra is think twice, cut once. Obviously that applies to the use of the knife, but if you know anything about how these knives are made, a lot of thought has been put into the design of the knife. A lot of thought has been put into keeping this a minimal design, even down to this Reeve integral lock. If you're not familiar, Chris Reeve actually invented this lock, the so-called frame lock that we now call it, what is the Reeve integral lock. And this probably is the grandfather of all the knives on the table, because not that these knives wouldn't exist, but this was the knife that created the frame lock. So these knives borrow that locking mechanism from Chris Reeve's knives. And even that design, they thought twice and they cut once. They made a design that used fewer parts, but still provided them the strength that they were looking for an overbuilt knife. So we're still talking about all overbuilt knives. So just the tolerances, everything that goes into a Chris Reeve knife, even if we're not talking about the use of the knife, which, like I said, clearly that's what their mantra is referring to. This knife was a knife that they thought twice about before they begin cutting out parts, so to speak. This is a well thought out, well machined, tight tolerance knife. So think twice, cut once. I'll make one other kind of non-related note. I often line knives up like this, and I've said this before in other videos. I line knives up like this because when you stack them the other way, it gives you a perspective bias, especially if you start to stack more than two knives. So if you stack them like this, it kind of gives you a more accurate representation of the size of the knives relative to one another. So anyway, total side note. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this. I don't know why I didn't make this video, and I know I still need to make a video comparing these two. Like I said, look at this. These are man, tell me those don't look like fraternal twins. But anyway, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say down below. This is the knife I'm going to carry today. I did not talk about that. This is a 66 Stockman with some beautiful desert ironwood. Look at that desert ironwood. And I love the fact that even though this is a classier looking knife, they still have those satin blades and that nail nick. So DLT really killed this one. Anyway, I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. Post them down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Remember, a lazy man carries a dull knife.